everyone.
Hello.
And welcome back to our chapters on the history of perfumery. And we are going to be discussing the years from sort of 1900 to around 1940.
Yes.
So sort of 40-year period where a lot happened. A lot happened in the socio-economic world, a lot happened in perfume. And there were some ups and there were some downs and everything in between. Because, I mean, where did we leave off in the last video? We talked about...
We definitely talked about synthetics, so things like coumarin becoming used in fragrance and that really revolutionising the kind of smells that we could get.
And that really continued in this period as well and intensified. And actually, it was quite interesting because... you've got this sort of new wave of ingredients that enabled people to make many different styles of perfume. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about new players that entered the perfumery market, the fashion designers.
And what you'll find a lot is that often perfume does follow trends in culture and in, you know, just what's going on in the world. And you see that a lot in these few years that we're going to talk about.
Absolutely, because the period began with kind of the death of Queen Victoria in I think 1901 or 1902, and that sort of signalled sort of the end of this sort of puritanical reign. And you entered a period. The whole period here was called the belle époque, which means like the beautiful era. So the idea was there was a real spirit of optimism around the early. Part of the sort of 1910s. And actually, there was a fragrance called La Belle Époque, which actually appeared in Harrods in 1999 as a limited edition. But it was a remake of something that Guerlain had done in this sort of period, and I think it was called La Belle France. And it's interesting because Guerlain is very predominant in this whole period.
They are, and a lot of the fragrances are still are available actually now, and maybe slightly changed.
A lot of them have been reworked
because of the ingredients that aren't available, or regulations. They've had to be reformulated. Another big house around this time was Houbigan.
Oh yes,
and I don't know if we mentioned it in our previous video.
Because Houbigan was very prolific in the 1800s as well, but the house continued on, was very famous in the early 1900s, and it was Le Parfum Ideal.
L'Ideal was the first kind of floral bouquet fragrance. So it contained all those things that we have, all the time now, but stuff like rose, ylang-ylang, jasmine, all the big
things
florals
that we take as for granted, because most floral fragrances are floral bouquets in the 20th century.
And also, this era was when the bottle really took off, wasn't it? And when bottle design became almost as important as what was inside it. And this fragrance from Houbigan, the bottle was designed by Baccarat. And still to this day, we have perfume houses that use Baccarat to make bottles. So that was great.
The other big name for bottle design was Lalique at the time, and it was Coty, François Coty, who really joined up with Lalique, and actually Coty's a big name in this period as well, and he was responsible for a whole host of amazing fragrances. I love the story about him, the sort of
how he made it big.
This idea of, I think it was as early as sort of 1904, 1905, and he had done all his study in grass, and then he was kind of going around as a salesman, kind of trying to sell his first perfumes to big French department stores, and they kept saying, no, you're too much of a risk, we're already doing business with big houses. And legend has it that in frustration at not being able to sell his wares, he kind of dropped and smashed one of the bottles of his fragrance, and the smell sort of filled the air of the department store, and all the customers were going crazy for it. So the perfumery buyer sort of looked and thought, maybe there's something in this after all, we should buy it.
I heard as well that actually the reason he set up with Lalique was that Lalique was his neighbour. He originally asked him to design just the labels for his bottle, and Lalique was like, well, no, I don't just do things in 2D, I want to design in 3D. So that's why they had a very long running partnership, Lalique and Coty.
Interesting. Another one of the Coty fragrances, which is quite a key one at this time, was the perfume called L'Oregon. And L'Oregon was one of the sort of the big players of the early 1900s. I want to say about 1906.
And it was a floral oriental, wasn't it?
It was a floral oriental, which
new.
Yeah.
No one had done that before.
We talked about the floral bouquet, and then the oriental side of it brings that warmth. So you've got the lovely kind of femininity of the flowers, and then that rich sort of almost ambery type note alongside.
The coumarin that we talked about before would have been used a lot in there, and Coty were also one of the first to introduce samples, weren't they? So they were really keen to let people try the fragrance before they buy it, which now we know that's so often with fragrance, but they started that.
Yeah, and I was thinking actually that in this period, I mean, this in social terms in this period. Things were available much more on a wider base to people. I mean, in this period with the whole kind of emancipation of women.
I was going to say, especially to women.
Absolutely. Yeah. So women were discovering things like perfume, which had thus far been really the privilege of the rich and famous. Yeah. And the royalty. And actually, Coty, there's a very famous saying, which I probably will misquote, but something like, he said, get a nice product, put it in a nice bottle, make it affordable, and you will have a business the size of which no one has ever seen before. And it's true, he ended up with a worldwide business because he did make things available to many more people.
In this era as well, I think we have to talk about the fact that it's when fashion designers became involved in fragrance, because that is a huge amount of fragrance today. Although actually now we're starting to see a turn back to perfumers brands, but for the last kind of 100 years or so, it's really been fashion designers. And it wasn't Chanel that started it. It was Paul Poiret,
who was massive as well.
Couturier,
absolutely, and sort of got rid of the bustier, got rid of the corset.
He was quite a characterful man, wasn't he? Big guy and big personality, and he really wanted to free women from these constraints of corsets and things. And
well, you imagine, like in the Victorian era, you were literally like laced into your clothes, and everything was so restricted.
It's not practical.
No, definitely. No. And now suddenly, with the early 1900s, with this whole sort of spirit of freedom coming, women were suddenly free in their bodies as well. And Poiret and Chanel, they both were really very instrumental, Champetier as well, in allowing women to wear things that asserted their personality more and didn't sort of keep them all stuffed up. And I think fragrance followed that trend as well.
And he was obviously dressing women in the dress, the shoes, the bag, the jewellery, and I think he just thought perfume would be the most logical next accessory. And so the company that he set up was Parfum de Rosine, which was the name of his daughter. So it was kind of inspired by her. I've heard that there is still a Parfum de Rosine shop
in Paris.
In Palais Royal. I don't know if this is right. Yeah, I'm going soon, actually, in the summer. So I'm going to try. But if any of you have been, or if any of you know about that, let us know, because I'd be really interested to try if there is anything still available.
To go back to Guerlain, we had in the sort of the end of because the Belle Époque period sort of, I think, finished really as the start of the First World War, around the sort of 1912, 1914 type era. And in 1912, Guerlain came to market with Le Bleu, which was again another famous fragrance, all based on that sort of twilight hour. The idea of, I think, the theory behind it was Guerlain was sort of standing by the River Seine, and it was that funny moment between sort of the sun not quite going down,
golden hour, where it's kind of the sky is that deep turquoisey blue colour.
So and the perfume had these wonderful sort of ingredients of aldehydes. First time Guerlain had used the aldehyde, that lovely sparkle, almost a fizz type note.
Which is a real fashion of this time.
Chanel made that really famous, that note. But then that lovely sort of depth as well. It was sort of, it's very kind of shady and sort of twilighty.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that's available anymore.
I think it still is. I think it is. A lot of these Guerlain fragrances aren't available everywhere, but definitely in the Champs-Élysées boutique, like their kind of flagship, they have a lot of these older scents.
And they are scents in this era that really the modern day scents have a lot to thank for. They kind of has inspired perfumers for decades.
Another one that inspired was the Chypre, Coty Chypre from 1917.
Which I read the other day, wasn't a huge commercial success at the time, and yet it really did. Well,
That often happens though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is that it built on this lovely kind of labdanum type oak mossy base, but then added the sparkle of the citrus bergamot and the jasmine type florals. To give a really beautiful fragrance of light and shade, that really kind of, this Chypre format was not really seen until then. I don't know whether it was
the first
Coty that were the first, because there's lots of different arguments in the perfume community about who invented Chypre and whether it really was anything that new anyway, because there was this
just
kind of
an evolution of, you know, something else, isn't it? Yeah,
but there's no doubt that, you know, Chypre as a perfume family is massively popular today, and we've had really in recent years an enjoyment of the modern day Chypre.
I think we've done a video on Chypre. We'll link it below if you're interested to know
it was in our autumn scents.
Oh, it was autumn scents and linked with Chypre.
Right. There you go. What else can we talk about? We could talk about after the First World War.
Yes.
And Tabac Blonde.
Yeah, because Tabac Blonde, I mean, tabac is like tobacco, and this was from the house of Caron in 1919, and it was really that kind of, I don't know how you describe it, the kind of masculine side of a woman.
They called the women at this time who were dressing in a sort of boyish manner,
androgynous,
were the petit garçons.
That's it. Yes,
the garçons as in boys.
Yeah.
And again, a total revolution from how women were dressing as the turn of the century came to now, where, you know, you were, hemlines were raising, people were wearing trouser suits,
exactly,
hair was being cut short. And Caron really captured that moment and did something on Virginia tobacco in terms of a smell. Really smoky. Yeah. So it must have
been... And that's definitely still available now.
Yeah, and I think it must have been, if you're a woman and you were kind of going into this era... Oh, it's
quite a statement. Yeah, quite a statement. Quite avant-garde feel to it, yeah.
I like that about perfume, though, that you can kind of assert a personality through your scent.
Yeah. So talking about asserting your personality, we also had in the same year Mitsuko from Guerlain, which is so famous, still around now. And this was very sexy, sensual. It had that real animalic, very gourmand at the same time.
Got lovely vanilla, tonka bean, iris notes.
And when I smell Mitsuko, I really... You know, it really reminds me of a kind of boudoir setting, you know, kind of...
It reminds me of Hollywood silent...
glamour.
You know, the silent films were really starting to take off in this era and in the 20s. So that kind of, you know, polished sort of look where, you know, she's in her boudoir and dressing to I don't know, I feel like silent films, the heroine is always tied to train tracks.
Oh God, like their legs
and the man has to come along and rescue her. So maybe whilst doing that, she's wearing Guerlain. The other thing as well in this era was, we've already mentioned it, this aldehydic note. Mitsuko uses a lot of aldehydes, sort of almost like a peach scented aldehyde.
Yes.
And Chanel also, her perfumer for number 5 in 1921, I think it was. Ernest Beau, he used an overdose of aldehydes to bring that brightness to Chanel, and there's so many legends about that.
Yes, there is, and I mean, obviously the basic story is that she was presented with all these different samples, and it was number 5 that she chose, which is why it's called number 5, and apparently by mistake he'd put in double the amount of aldehydes or something, and he didn't ever expect her to choose that one, and that's the one she went for.
But then I suppose it's what makes it unique. Yeah. It's still number 5 today, all these years later. It tops the charts at Christmas
every
time.
year.
It does have a longevity about the name and the kind of story.
Yeah, I mean, that is also because, and it started back in the 20s, because of the marketing around it and the PR around it. And Chanel was so good at that. You know, she was a celebrity in her own right, and she was so good at promoting her brand. And I think that's why Chanel has always, had this kind of, it's always on trend. You know, it never goes out of trend, does it? It's something that you pass down generations.
Trend. Yeah. And I mean, the story is that when she launched number 5, she went to a restaurant filled with all the influential people and sprayed Chanel number 5 everywhere. So suddenly all these women were like, "Oh my goodness, what's that smell?" You know, so all these marketing campaigns are playing their part now as we're coming into the 20s.
Yeah. So quite obviously inspired by that kind of aldehyde trend from number 5, we had the fragrance from Lanvin of Arpège
in 1927.
27, and we actually have it here because it is one that we work with. So this was Jean Lanvin. Again, she was a couturier. She was up there with Paul Poiret, Chanel.
She was so avant-garde as well in her day. I mean, she was like the forerunner of the power woman.
Yes, definitely.
And doing amazing things in women's fashion that hadn't been seen before. And I love this perfume because of the personal connection about it.
So you'll notice on the bottle there's this logo, which is the Lanvin house logo now, and this was actually taken from a picture of her holding hands with her daughter, and it was like Paul Poiret's collection. It was really inspired by her daughter and created for her daughter, which I think a lot of things were at that time.
She told the perfumers that really money was no object, and she just wanted perfection, and she wanted something that was sort of luxurious and a true present for her daughter. And you really have it in this. You have something that has got the brightness of those aldehydic notes, but it's got so many florals.
So, I was going to say so many florals,
strong and heady. But at the same time, without being sickly or overpowering, and I don't find it headachy either, this one. Again, we've talked about it before. We did a Lanvin review last year, so we'll try and link that. But it really is, it's one of those fragrances that I do come back to even today. So we're however many years on,
90
years on this year, and
it's a classic.
It's still relevant today. And when you wear this fragrance, it's like many of this period, you do feel very glamorous.
You do, you feel sophisticated, grown up, you know, it's really a classic.
The other classic that we can't not mention is Joy by Jean Coty. So now we're sort of going into 30s now. And again, we said at the beginning of the video that this whole period socially was up and down. You know, you've gone from the decadence and the hedonism of the Roaring 20s. As we go into the 30s, you had, I mean, in fashion, you had completely different fashion. So hemlines went down, you know, to calf length. The bobbed hair then was grown and put up into sort of an elegant sort of chignon. And then you had this sort of almost more of a kind of sober feeling as the economic crisis,
the Wall Street crash.
And Jean Coty was instrumental in bringing something to cheer people up.
He was obviously a French designer, but a lot of his customers were in America, and because he did this more kind of sportswear and kind of new style that the Americans wanted, and so he would go over on cruise liners quite regularly to New York to show his collections and things. And when the Wall Street crash happened, obviously it was a pretty awful time, and a lot of his customers who had a lot of money suddenly didn't have very much, and he thought, what can I do to kind of tap into this event? And so he created a fragrance called Joy, and sent it out to all his top customers.
I think, at first, before it was for sale. I think it was a gift. And again, a bit like I was saying with Lanvin, who had briefed the perfumer that was sort of money was no object. Jean Coty was the same. You know, when he's
often known as the most expensive perfume.
And it's because of the ingredients, you know, and so it was Henri Almirez who made this, and he'd gone away and sort of come back with this lovely kind of duo of jasmine and May Rose from Grasse in the south of France, and Coty went, I love it, now double the quantity. So you've got this real rich heart of rose and jasmine in there. But also what's remarkable about this, and again it's that marketing thing, is this is that fragrance era then that started tapping into fragrance as an aspirational product. You know, so I want to buy something because it represents this wonderful fashion house. I might not be able to afford the fashion, but I can afford a piece of it through fragrance. And that idea has stayed with us through designer sense all the way up to the present day. So lots happened in this era. I know we haven't got time to mention every single fragrance that was playing a part.
Let us know though if you have any
more
favourites from this era, because you might still wear some or love some.
What has been discontinued now that you'd love to see brought back?
Gosh, yeah.
There's just so many that are sort of lost that you read about and you think, I'd love to smell that. And then next time we'll go on into the 40s. So, you know, after the Second World War, and in the 1940s and the era of Christian Dior's Miss Dior or L'Eau du
Temps.
Thank you. L'Eau du Temps. Get my French right. By Nina Ricci.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.